Well, guys, I've discovered another disease, and sometimes it's fatal. It's another syndrome. It's called the Walkaway Wife Syndrome. So this is when your marriage deteriorates slowly, when your wife makes a slow exit and you're not even aware of it. This is the Walkaway Wife Syndrome. And I think that I had that in my marriage, that my wife left the marriage and I just didn't get the memo. So this is something that I think probably affects most nice guys at some point in their life. So welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm your host, Ari Graff. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Faisal Kokar and Chuck Chapman. We are men's coaches and we help men, especially with nice guy syndrome, to get what they want in love, sex, and life. All right, so a little introduction to Walkaway Wife Syndrome. This refers to a situation where a wife, after having years of emotional neglect and feeling a lack of appreciation from her man, unmet needs, starts to contemplate leaving the marriage. So it's the impact over time of feeling unfulfilled, undervalued, and this can lead a woman to reach a breaking point and then eventually walk away for her own emotional well-being. So this is really important what I'm going to go over with you before we get into our conversation, because this is an overview of the stages of walkaway wife syndrome. And I want you, the listener, to ask if you're in one of these stages already, if you're married or even just in a long-term relationship. The first stage of the walkaway wife syndrome is when she's asking for some kind of change from you. I need more communication. I need more intimacy. And then the man is usually like, what are those? Or what am I supposed to do? Um, and so, if those needs or requests go unheard or misunderstood, it can progress to the next stage, which is growing resentment. She's feeling very unheard and unseen, uncared for. And this is what you want to pay attention to. If she's starting to talk about that stuff less, if she's complaining less because there's been no change, that means she's checking out already. So some men are going to misread that as, well, things are better now, or we've actually made progress. But don't mistake a lack of complaints as progress. The next stage is also very serious. There's only about 5 stages that you want to pay attention to, and that's the emotional exit. So she starts to detach emotionally at this point. She's not bringing things up anymore, and she's not even trying to connect. She's already fantasizing about life without you. And this is when you want to look for signs like she might be focusing on the kids or her career or going to grad school or her own personal growth. So at this point, she's already grieving the marriage. That's the emotional exit. So after that, all that's left really is the physical exit. So that's when you get the conversation that I'm done. This ain't working. The decision's already made at this point. It's too late. And that's where you often have a lot of guys feeling blindsided and in total shock and scrambling to fix things. Oh, we need to go to couples therapy. I'll go to individual therapy. I'll get in shape. I'll do this. I'll do that. It's already done. The decision's already been made. You just didn't get the memo about it. And then after that, it's just all the fallout from it. Nice guys who are feeling, angry and desperate and, aggrieved, but it's too late because you were asleep at the wheel. So that tracks pretty well with my marriage. Faisal and Chuck, you are both divorced. Does the walkaway wife syndrome fit what happened in your marriage? We've already established that you guys are big time nice guys.
I would say yes,
Recovering
100%. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Yes. And not only that, I see it in like so many men that I work with come to me. It's like blindsided. It's like my wife just left me. She just walked out and I want to, how can I get her back? What do I need to do to save this, And yeah, it's almost always too late at that point, because they didn't recognize the signs. But yeah, it's happened to me. I was married for 20 years and literally one night my wife, I was remember a day like yesterday, sitting I was taking a nap on the couch. It was a Sunday afternoon. She woke me up. She said, I need to let you know that, I'm done with the marriage. I've rented an apartment and I'm moving out. Like, boom, like that. And, yeah, it's fucking devastated. Yeah, just didn't really see it coming. I mean, I knew we had problems. I knew there were things going on, with her, uh, knew she wasn't happy, those kind of things. But, yeah, literally like one day life changed, went, 180.
Now, when you heard the different stages and you look back, can you see now when you were in that early stage of she's making requests for a change or something?
Well, it's a beautiful thing about hindsight. 2020. Yeah, you can definitely look at that and see. And, I think that, you know, I was, again, with hindsight, I look back and I see a lot of the little problems that were going on in our relationship, even from, kind of the outset. But I just kind of put that, mark that up to sort of like, well, men and women are different. And, she's an emotional creature and, all these kind of things like that. Um, yeah, I can see it now. Short answer. Yes, I see it now. Then I didn't see it because I wasn't aware of it. And I think what's one of the reasons why I think this podcast in particular is extremely important, because it will alert men to the possibility of this happening. So I think it's twofold. One, it's like, okay, if you see the signs, there's something you can do. And if you didn't see the signs, there's something you can do. Like if you're going through a divorce, there's something you can do to learn from it and learn to thrive. And then, um, when you get in a relationship again, at some point, you'll know what to do and you'll know the signs to look for. And I think that's the other thing that, I've noticed is that actually guys that have been blindsided like this, when they get in a second relationship, they're so aware of it at that point that they really start making some changes. So kind of the good news is for the ladies that if you run into a man that, was blindsided like this, he's probably a really good quality guy and just, wasn't given that second chance.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think having a marriage that has quote unquote failed is a great learning experience. But I don't think people automatically learn from it. There's a lot of people who have a second or third divorce, or even just in their dating life post divorce, are making a lot of the same mistakes. So it can be a powerful learning experience, but it does require an active learning process from it. That's a big part of why I've created my own divorce recovery program, because I think men need to be taught what are the lessons to take, like understanding like what are these stages, so then you can consciously create the kind of relationship that you want. Faisal, what about you? Does this track with your marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. As you guys were sharing about your journey as well, it just brought back all the intense emotions and the experience as well. Like, I didn't see it coming, and I remember I had a wonderful weekend with my wife and my kids, and it was just us two in the house, and then she just came to me and said, "Hey, I'm leaving," and that moment, it like you said, Chuck, it fucking hurt. It was a sting. And I remember just collapsing on my knees and just crying. And I couldn't believe this was happening. And there was a part of me that just felt devastated. And what followed afterwards was all these emotions that came out. There was anger, there was bitterness, there was, feeling betrayed. And because she had planned everything in the
Mhm.
background, like she already
Yeah.
had planned moving out. She already planned the kids' school and had notified of that.
She had a getaway car.
Yeah,
Sid,
mine
it was
too.
what
Yeah.
it was. No, it was. She had her parents, and she took. We had the weekend together. She took the kids, and her parents were looking after the kids when I came back, and it was just us two having a conversation. And yeah, I felt cheated on. I felt betrayed. I felt have all of these emotions came on. I also had an insight of, right, do I get really angry and fight this, or do I take 100% ownership and just really deal with this and find out what I fucked up? Where did I go wrong? Where do I need to make sure that I work on that I don't um, repeat the same mistake? So again, that journey was really painful, but I do recognize the stages. One of the things I did notice that I know that a lot of men struggle is just signals and cues. They struggle in signals when a girl likes him, but they also struggle when a girl's really upset or complaining. Because what I thought, I knew there were some problems in my marriage, but I kind of the fixer me fixed the problem momentarily, but it wasn't like a long term solution. And I thought, okay, there's less complaints, things are good, there's no signals, everything's going hunky dory, everything's good. So I was in that, I had that belief, well, hang on a minute, why do you have all these complaints? Look, I'm the provider, I'm the protector, we have a house, we have all the practical things that we need. Because I'm coming from my practical frame. And then you have these complaints, and then I fix these complaints, and these complaints go. And then I'm thinking, okay, everything's cool. But in my world, in my masculine world, everything's provided for. The kids are all fine. We got food, we got money, we got a house, we got everything sorted out. So I other signals were like, well, they're a bit pointless. I really didn't take them on until I had to learn about relationships, women, men. So yeah, it was a real learning curve there afterwards.
Yeah, I think this is just such a common thing is that men kind of occupy that provider role and feel like they're done, and there's all these ways to lead emotionally. These are a lot of the things that I know Chuck works on in his program. How to have connection on a regular basis. I think some of these skills are, um, yeah, they're less tangible, less obvious. It's more of a process of regular connection that I think women need. And
So I've got
sorry,
a
go
question
ahead.
about, especially for you guys. We talked about the signals not picking it up. A lot of guys actually miss the signals when she's cheating on him as well, and it comes to a lot later on than she's cheating on him, and then it's like, bam, it hits you. So I know Ari, you experienced that as well. Did you miss all the signals, or were they there, whether the breakup or the cheating, and then you kind of like ignored them, brushed them under the carpet? How does it go for you and other guys as well?
Well, I mean, one thing I was going to say is that I think her feeling of emotional neglect predates even us getting married. It was during the courtship phase. And then we had a little, brief honeymoon period after we actually got married. You have all the excitement of getting married. But even the honeymoon had some strain. So that, there were signs to pick up early on. What I didn't realize, like, I'll get back to your question in a minute, but like, I just didn't think divorce was something that could ever happen to me. So I think that is it's a belief that a lot of people have.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
And like being a psychologist, I felt like, well, this couldn't happen to me. I got too much therapy game, and my wife, she was in therapy. We would have therapy like talks with each other. So I felt like, we would figure it out. And that really doesn't give you protection in the long run. But to go back to what you were saying, like, yeah, it was a progression of her feeling emotionally neglected for years. And we did some couples therapy, helped a little bit, but it didn't change things, I think, fundamentally enough about how I was relating to her, how I was showing up. So I do take a lot of responsibility for it. So she did progressively distance, and so like some of the things that I was talking about, um, her investing more in like her friendships with her girlfriends. She ended up having a couple close girlfriends. They started going on more girls' trips. She went to grad school, um, which is a good thing. She got invested in doing yoga. So she was. There was definitely more of a focus from her on her own interests, which now I can see is a sign. Like that can be both a good thing, but it can be a retreat away from the relationship also. But then there was just a lot of emotional distancing. Um, and that, I think in order to have an affair, that's not just like maybe an impulsive one weekend thing, but something that's very planful. Um, which is what she did. It takes like some real distancing from your partner, um where you're you're kind of like disconnected from the impact it would have on your partner. So um I'm extrapolating, in retrospect. um to get back to your question, Faisal, I did see signs that she was having an affair. I mean, she had connected with this old boyfriend on Facebook. Cliche, I know. Um, and she was going on more girls' trips, and she was just like on her phone a lot, and in a way that was very suspicious. Like not just scrolling, but like furiously closing apps if I came in the room. Like, so that's a telltale sign. Um, so yeah, there were signs he was having an affair, and then for 6 months, I suspected it, but I bit my tongue because I thought that if I brought it up, maybe I'll just seem like um, a suspicious husband, and it'll push her away more. So I didn't bring it up until she finally brought it up. So there was a lot of signs along the way, and now I know. Hopefully that will help people.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that the sort of typical nice guy thing of avoiding conflict and, speaking about these kind of things or asking the questions, like we're afraid that, she's going to get angry with us, or we're going to seem like the suspicious husband, or, something along those lines. But I think that, like, there's, if you're talking in a relationship, and you're having deep, meaningful conversations on a regular basis, that is kind of what's going to keep things healthy. And then, and the sign then is like, we don't really talk, other about than logistics, like who's going to pick up the kids and who's going to do this. And, are we having your parents over on Saturday night for dinner? Those are the kind of conversations that you start having. And it almost feels as if like, well, we've run out of things to talk about. And I think that's also not only a sign, but so now some other guy comes along and he's new and fresh and everything, they're talking and I think a lot of affairs with women start with the emotional piece of it. It's sort of like you said, Ari, it's like, oh, I connect with an old friend from high school on Facebook. And, we're having these conversations. First, we're having these, conversations around, walking down memory lane together. And then we're talking about our relationship. And then we're talking about how unhappy we're in our relationship. And then he's like, he starts pursuing her and she starts feeling connected to this guy. And I think it's a pattern that I think both men and women don't necessarily see. Like, I don't think the woman's in her mind going, oh, I feel like I'm slipping away from this. I think with her, I think with men, it's more of kind of a slow boil. Or I think with women, there's at some point where she goes, the switch flips, and she's like, okay, I'm done with this. I've just got to figure out my exit strategy. Whether that is, when the kids are gone, or when we've got enough money, or when we've got, when I find that job that I say that, I think I should get a part-time job. Those kind of things are warning signs that, or she's, and I think the other thing, like, again, with the communication, for me, I didn't do the finances. My wife did the finances, right? I made the money, but I gave it to her, and then she did the finances. So I didn't know she was squirreling away money on the side. I didn't know that. And in fact, Faisal, when you were talking, one of the things that she left me with when she left me, is, I don't know if it's codependence or caring, but she left me with a budget of how I was going to make it without her. Like, here's how it's going to, roll out.
Man.
Yeah. So it's like, I wasn't aware because we weren't communicating, and I was letting some big things slip. Like, she wants to do the finances, fine, do it.
Is that from day one, or was that at certain point?
No, that wasn't from day one. I think I think what it was, was I was doing the finances to begin with because, both grew up in this religious household where it's like, the man does the finances, right? And I would screw things up. I would forget to pay a bill, and then all of a sudden the lights would go off. And, it wasn't that I didn't have the money. It was just like, I just forgot to do it, and then I would, she would be upset with me, and to a point where she was like, okay, I'm going to take this over because you can't do it. And I was kind of happy to let her do it because, my ADHD brain wasn't able to kind of keep on track with, and this is back before there was like online banking and auto bill pay and things like that, where you had to sit down at the end of the month and write checks and put them in an envelope and send them out. It took it was like a 2.5 hour exercise of paying your bills. So when she said she wanted to do it, I was like, yeah, have at it. See if you can do any better. And that was, like I said, it was one of those things that I wasn't aware of. And, she just started squirreling away a little bit of money here and there until she had her exit plan all in place, and then she just executed.
Yeah. And I noticed that that women have a lower tolerance for, say, problems, because in biological terms, that women have a lower tolerance when it comes to, say, discomfort, pain, smell. So they can really feel and experience a lot more than guys can. What I noticed was that when there is discomfort in the relationship, guys will be, yeah, we'll just carry on as long as we can. And then she will do something about it. So, well, guys will just say, oh, well, it's bad, but I can deal with it. I can tolerate it. It's okay. It's misery, but the misery of breaking up, then going through the whole separation, then sorting out the house, the kids. I don't want that. It's easier just to deal with this pain rather than the new pain. So the guys kind of get in this comfortable area where the tolerance is much higher, but her tolerance is lower. And I think that that's for nurturing evolution. That's why women feel a lot more disgust. I was having this conversation about tolerance levels, and I said this is why a lot of guys, well, children in nappies can diapers, as you call them, can
Thank you.
tolerate.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the
guys
translation.
in the diapers, the boys will sit there and they got full diapers and messy, and the girls will be like, oh, she has to get that clean. So the tolerance level for disgust is much lower, and that kind of like explains why guys will just ignore the signs, just carry on with it, just bear that pain, or that pain of not having that closeness, not having that attention. She is screaming out saying, hey, we have a problem, and the guy's like, okay, well, I tend to do a lot of temporary fixes, and that was enough for me to just carry on with the relationship. So temporary fixes would be good. Okay, cool. Let me just see how I can fix this situation, this argument. And then there'll be a relief. And then it'll be, okay, cool. Everything's back to zero. Everything's reset. And that was my logical thinking. Everything's reset. There's no more problems now because we just resolved that problem. So there's no more long-term problems.
I think that was well said. Yeah, I think that resonates with me. Just wanting to kind of fix the immediate situation and hope that ends the problems in general. Like, how would you fix a problem?
Well,
Do you have an example?
I think that like the thing is that for us, like the lights go out. It's like, to me, it's like, oh, no big deal. I'm going to make a phone call and I'll give my credit card and the lights will be back on in 20 minutes. Big deal. Like, you're overreacting. What I didn't see was that message to her was, I'm not safe, because if he lets a little thing slide, what's he going to do with the big thing? Um, and so I think it's a double-edged sword in that men have as Faisal would say, a higher tolerance level, where as we fix a problem, it's like, okay, it's done, it's fixed. I made a phone call, like I called a plumber, I did the thing, I did whatever it took. But I think in her mind, was, there shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. Like, you should have taken care of this before it ever happened. And that because you didn't means I can't trust you. And if I can't trust you, then, how can I open myself up to you?
And this is the thing. This is one of the things that totally drives me crazy about women, is when they turn like not paying the light bill into I can't trust you, or I don't feel safe. But
But
this is
I get that though.
real.
Yeah, but okay. Do you get that? Okay, let's just have a different circumstances. Now, I get where she's coming from as a parent. when it comes to my kids.
Yes.
Because when my kids show up with incompetency, right? They're incompetent, and I'm going, oh, for heaven's sake, I've told you a million times. Can you pull it together and get this sorted out? Because when I'm dead or I'm not around, and you're going to be having those problems, it just shows that how you're going to survive in the world. How are you going to be competent in the world? How are you going to provide for your family? So I get it that it's in context, logically, it's a small thing. It's like you haven't paid the light bulb. But what that shows is actually a competent man, a real man, as women would put it, would have got that handled. So if you can't get those things handled, how are you being a man? How are you being competent? And to me, I see the same kind of like I have the same complaints. I'm like, guys, listen, you need to be able to get this situation maturely handled as an individual, because there are going to be other problems that you need to sort out. These are like adolescents problem. Yeah, okay, I know they're young, but I'm still conditioning them to be, hey, you need to be on top of this. If you can't be on top of this, and then we have real threats, then you are going to be asleep. Like you said, you're falling asleep at the wheel. You are not going to be able to provide and protect. So to me, that's what it clues is that you're not socially competent, you're emotionally competent as a man.
Not only
What?
that, but I think you bring up another great point, Faisal, which is
Well,
it's
thank you.
not just her that you're letting down, it's the children. If I can't trust you to take care of me and the children, right? You can't pay a light bill. Then I think that sort of like 10x is the problem in her mind, because that mama bear kind of comes out and she's like, well, if you can't take care of me and the kids, then I'm just going to have to go take care of us without you.
Yeah,
Well, it's also it's not just about making errors like not paying the light bill. It's how you respond to her complaint about it. It's the solution is not just paying the light bill and not just not paying the light bill again. It's also empathizing with how it felt to her and recognizing how that affects her safety and trust, like actually communicating that to her.
yeah,
Well,
and it
and
shows thoughtfulness as well. It shows that you're. Here's something that it really signals: if you're incompetent around here in say the little things, it shows that you're not really present. You're offline. You're somewhere else. You're so maybe self-absorbed in other aspects where you're not being competent. You're not being present in what in your surroundings, in your world. You haven't got your world handled. So what's happening is that the lights going off is a reminder of like, hey, guy, were you not on top of this? So
Mhm.
it shows that you haven't got the basics sorted out. And if she has to tell you to sort the basics out, pick up your socks, or don't forget your dentist or appointment, or just the small things, or put your tie together, and what kind of shoes are you wearing? She's saying that if I have to teach you as a man the basic stuff, then it develops a parent-child relationship.
Mhm.
And then she feels like that I have to parent him. I have to, and of course, no woman's going to get excited about a parent-child relationship. So to me, it shows there's a lot of you're not present, you're not competent, you're not clued up, you don't have situational awareness, and that you really need to grow up. So it's more of the boy energy coming out rather than the man.
Yeah. And to Ari's point, I think that, um, the way you handle it, because, you know, for me, it's like, oh, I forgot to pay the bill. Oh, no big deal. Right. And then she's upset. And I don't really understand why she's upset, because to me, it's not that big of a deal. But really, it's my own ego protection of going like, well, why are you getting so upset? Why is this such a big deal? This isn't a big deal. It's just like, I forgot to pay the bill, and I'll give him a call and it'll be back on in 20 minutes, like chill. And when we react like that, that's really an ego defense mechanism, as opposed to being able to like go, oh yeah, I can see why you're upset about this. I could see why that would be, like,
I like
I mean,
that.
yeah. And I think that, flip the switch a little bit here. And
Hold on.
if
Well, I've got a question for you, Chuck. So, in the moment, it's like the ego going on self-protective mode, but also, isn't this like a pattern of just temporarily dealing with the situation? It's like, okay, we'll just fix it now; it'll be done, and then we're not thinking about the long-term ramifications of those actions. It's just like I'll just fix the problem. Everything's going to be okay. Back to zero, reset.
well, here's what the thing is, I think, Faisal, is that we fix the problem so that she won't be upset with us anymore. Because it's not about the lights, right? It's about, oh, she's pissed and I need to fix this. So I'm going to either go with, I fixed it, we're done, stop being upset, or why are you so upset? This isn't a big thing.
Right. It's a very nice guy kind of response. Like, how can I get rid of her anger, her feelings, the conflict, the tension?
And as soon as that's gone, everything's okay. So we can go back to normal.
So let's give the guys a response. So guys who have maybe quite new to these person development, growth, masculinity, how would a integrated man, a more evolved man, respond to a complaint like, "You forgot to pay the bill. What's wrong with you?" So how would he respond to that? That doesn't come from a place of ego. That doesn't come from a place of just temporarily fixing this, but something that will make her feel more secure. That will actually, you will consider your actions more deeply than, oh, sort it out and just ignore it. So what would I come? Let's go with you, Ari, first, and then Chuck.
Yeah, I mean, I would take ownership. You know, I forgot to pay that bill, and I realized that I haven't been paying attention well enough to, all of our financial stuff. And I want to own that and recognize that it probably makes you, it probably makes it harder for you to trust me with these parts of our life. And I want to be conscious of this in the future.
I like that. How about you, Chuck?
Yeah, it's similar. I think there's a couple things. One is ownership. Okay. Yeah. You know, this was something that happened on my watch. I should have taken care of that. A correction, which is, here's what I'm going to do in the future to make sure this doesn't happen. And thirdly, I think one of the things that we fail to ask for is forgiveness. Will you forgive me for this? And ask for that, because I think that asking for the forgiveness piece is basically saying, can you not hold this against me? Are you willing to let this go? And I think we miss that a lot, oftentimes in conversations where there's an apology happening, where it's like, I'm going to own it, I'm going to correct it, and your part is, I need you to let go. And can you do that?
My only quibble with that is I think sometimes, I mean, if you're always expecting forgiveness, that can sort of let you off the hook potentially. If there's like a real pattern of making the same error over time.
True. I mean, I think that's the same thing with an apology. If you're always making an apology, it doesn't hold water for very, very long. But I think I mean, in a, just call it kind of a rip, right? There has to be a repair, and there's a repair on both parties have to agree to the repair, and and she may just give you lip service and say, yeah, I forgive you, but not forgive you. But I think that the thing is that there is I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to need something from you. And the thing that I need from you is to give me the opportunity, to prove that I can handle this. But I also think that, as guys, we've got to take it really serious, because again, it's like in my world, it's like, oh, no big deal. I forgot to pay the bill, Um, and part of that, again, I think is the ego protection of like, oh, I don't want to feel badly for doing something that I forgot. So I'm just going to minimize it or, and forget about the impact that this has on the people in my life. But yeah. So I think it needs, to your point, Ari, I think it needs to be sincere, and it needs to be one of those things where you use it as a way to restore rather than like to stop her anger.
I think it's really important that the guys will see the complaint, will see as nagging, but it's an opportunity for us guys to sharpen ourselves up. Is to really, um, what I'm doing now more is when I have a complaint or a criticism, and before I used to really, my ego used to really take it personally, get upset, get offended by it, have a tantrum about it. It's like I hated feedback. But now it's like, oh, what I do is reframe it as here's an opportunity to sharpen myself and then really assess what they're saying. Is it true? Can I really use that as a benefit to sharpen me and show up more evolved, better man, that'll make me more successful in work, life, business, whatever it's intimacy, relationships. So what I'm doing now is just reframing complaints, slowing down, taking my time, and just really taking that on board. So in my response would be, I know I really appreciate that feedback because it's really helped me to see something that maybe I need to work on more and see sharpening. So there might be times where I do um, um, again might fail a few more times, but just remember that I promise that I'm working on this. And you really mean that, because once you have a complaint and say, hey, I'm going to work on this, you're not going to be instantly changed on that. You are going to have that repetition of making those mistakes. But what if there's a gradual kind of like increment improvements in that? Look, I'm going to improve on this, but don't have this expectation of I'll completely be fixed. But the realistic expectation is I might fall a few times. You might need to remind me a few times or just give me the look, but I'm on top of it. So that's more of the realistic way of like things might not always be perfect, but it's going to get there.
Listening to this conversation, I found myself feeling defensive at times, or more just like remembering feeling defensive because of so much criticism that I got. And I do think that could be the experience of a lot of men, is that they're criticized so much that it can feel like a tall order to take this level of responsibility uh, in these situations. That I just wanted to recognize that it might not feel easy if you're
Yeah.
right in the thick of it.
Yeah,
I think
there's a good point as well, because it'll feel very grated. It's like I'm worn out by that. So yeah, it's a really good point, Ari, because if you are worn out by the same criticism and complaints, you'll just become deaf to it, and then you'll just be angry about it, resentful about it. But again, it's one of those things that guys really have to take this away, step away from this. Like men's groups, men's work, coaching, support can really help guys just to really bring themselves back. And looking back at my relationship, had I had a community of guys where I could have openly shared about, actually, you know what, I'm really struggling in my relationship, and the guys would have said, yeah, me too, and I would have been able to then understand this and tackle it more, because I did the typical thing when my relationship was in trouble. I try to fix it by myself, try to do it all alone. And I think that's a recipe for disaster.
I think the other thing is like I sort of trained myself because I grew up where, there's a lot of criticism in my house. And I tend to hear a complaint as a criticism. And I think there's a distinction between those two things where complaint is, um, you know, you left your socks on the floor. It's a complaint, something that I don't like. Whereas a criticism is more of a subtle personal attack on your character. You always leave your socks on the floor. And so I'm really kind of like when my wife complains, ask myself, is she criticizing me? Is she saying, I'm stupid? Oftentimes I'll hear it as a criticism when it's really not a criticism. It's just a complaint. It's just a preference. She would prefer that I do this over that. Now, I think the problem is if if she's complaining and you don't follow through, then it starts to turn into the criticism. And the criticism then becomes criticism is sort of like a complaint turns into criticism because there's a resentment that happens because you didn't follow through in the first place. And then that resentment starts to become more of a, kind of a contempt. And then that contempt sort of starts to grow into, I can't trust you. So yeah, I do understand your point, Ari, that, guys will feel like, God, everything I do, it's never good enough. And if if I was to apologize for every single one of the missteps, along the way, um, if you're getting a lot of criticism, it's probably because there's a lot of resentment.
Yeah. I think we're hitting on something important is that yeah, men can be doing a lot right. And then also feel like the majority of interaction with their wife is distance, uh, frustration, criticism, and kind of being depriving of affection, um, or other, like other emotional things that they could give. So that was my experience. So it's really hard to want to work on things or want to step up more uh, when this is what you're getting from your partner. But then if you don't, then it's probably going to advance into stage 4 of Walkaway Wife Syndrome. So how much do you think that this can be reversed once it's in motion?
Oh, this is a good question. Um, it depends on the guy as well and what stage he's in. As you guys were sharing about the criticism and the complaints, what was coming up for me was that, well, there may be a place where he may be with a partner who's hypercritical or judgmental. So we haven't really tackled about, we've looked at ourselves, which is good, and the guy, but also the guy could be with a partner who's very incompatible with them. And again, that could be, there's a lot of problems that could arise from that too. So it's not just the guy working on this. So I just really want to reiterate for the guys here, we're just taking on what we can do for what we can do, what we can be in control of. But they could be that you have a situation where the partner isn't willing, compromising, open. They could be very egotistical, not taking on any accountability. So there could be all those aspects going on for them. Now, when it comes to being able to recover this, I think recovery can happen is if you really want this, because I've had guys who say, well, I want to win her back. And first of all, I go through the whole process of why, what was it? And when we go through the whole process of what it was, and I said the best way you can work on this is to create some space, really create some space so you can really reflect on Is this the right thing for you to go back to the relationship? And then have you done enough work, habitual work, characteristic works? Have you done enough of an upgrade that whether you're trying to win her back or any other woman back, or that you are desirable enough? So do you have the characteristics, the traits that will make you desirable, not just to your ex, but to a woman that would say, I don't want to be in this company? And I've seen that. I've seen guys who have worked enough on themselves in space, so they had their own separation time, that the ex has been able to say, actually, you know what? Let's give this another go, because they're better at not avoiding conflict. So they actually deal with the situation. They lean in rather than avoiding the conflict. They better know what they want. They have better boundaries. They have better habits. They are more competent in themselves. So now they're coming from more of a whole integrated place rather than being very codependent, needy on the person. So yeah, it is possible, but it depends on how much you want it and how much work you're willing to put into it. And again, obviously, if she's already met somebody and she's happy, move on.
Yeah, I tend to like diagnose this as like, there's a cancer in your relationship. What stage of cancer are you at? Because if you're at stage 1 or 2, it's a whole lot easier, likely that you're going to, do the treatment and the cancer is going to go in remission or go away. Where if you're in stage, 4 cancer, it's like, yeah, there's not a lot we can do here. And I think the relationship is sort of similar to that. If she's to the point where she's walked away and moved out, that's like stage 4. It's not impossible. People survive that, but it's a whole lot more likely that the relationship is going to die. And I think that there are two things you can do, just like with cancer, is you can do preventative work to begin with to make sure this doesn't happen. And when the signs come up early on, then you start treating it. You start recognizing this. And it's really about recognizing the signs, similarly to like, oh, I've got a lump on my neck. I should go get this checked out, kind of thing, as opposed to waiting for it to, become this giant baseball sized lump where it's like, I should probably do something about this now, So I think it's a similar kind of thing. It really depends on where you're at in the process. And it really depends too on her willingness to fight for the relationship as well. And I think that's a thing that I try to teach people is it's not just about her. It's not winning her back. This isn't a competition. You don't get a prize at the end of it. It's about two people who decide that they're going to save the marriage, save the relationship, and we're going to work on the relationship as opposed to, I'm going to, we can just start having sex again and everything's going to be fine. It's really about understanding both needs of each partner and working towards the restoration of the relationship as opposed to like, I've got to make her happy.
That's a great point. Yeah. Some women really want to fight for the relationship, and other women, they're just done. And so that's something that you need to assess, and don't just go by their talk, go by their actions. At the end of my marriage, my ex, uh, at my kind of pushing, was willing to go to couples therapy, but she wasn't willing to work in couples therapy.
Mm-hmm.
She went to couples therapy with me to see if she would want to work on the relationship. That should have been a huge clue of the kind of chasm that was there, and about how checked out she was. So it's really important that you make a judgment about the other person's willingness to work on things. I think one thing, I do like this idea of like looking at it as like stages of cancer almost. Um, I just think that people need to have a sense of urgency, even at the level one. You know, if your partner, whether you're a man or a woman, if your partner is feeling already frustrated, feeling like you're not um, you're not communicating with them, or they're not getting their intimacy needs met, you know, you've got to take that seriously. You've got to have a sense of urgency from the beginning. And the other thing that I wanted to emphasize, like, this is what I believe, is that a relationship is either growing, uh, or it's deteriorating. That's how I would look at it. Like, and you know, even if you think about like a relationship as sort of maintaining at a certain level, like at a good level, that still takes good amount of effort. Like, think about, you know, if you're in good shape, what does it take to just maintain being in good shape? Not even like putting on more muscle or running faster, like just to maintain something in good shape takes a good amount of effort. So I would think about it, okay, that you are either growing your relationship or you're letting it deteriorate. I would put it in those terms.
You know, when you
I
said about
agree.
urgency, it was reminding me of guys tend to only do things when it's at breaking point, right? So
Right.
it's like when it gets
When there's
to
a
a
problem.
really when it's so bad, then they'll do something about it. So I think this is where the
When the
conscious
lump
man.
becomes the size of a baseball, then I'll do something about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like right now, I've got a little bit of pain in my tooth. I'm like, yeah, I can tolerate my tolerance level. When it becomes unbearable, then I'll go to the dentist. But right now, I'm like, okay, I can just ignore it. And I think most guys, this is why they have more health problems at later stages, because they leave everything to the last minute. So when it comes to the relationship as well, it's only when she's left, then it's like, okay, I've got a problem. That, or she's gone. That, okay, we have a problem. Cool. Well, now I need to sort it out. So a lot of guys have this habit that hopefully when they've learned and evolved and grown and done a lot of work, is that they can catch it at stage one.
Yeah. Like, you know, if I put on 10 pounds, to me, that's urgent. Like, I got to do something about it. Other people, it might be 50 pounds or 100 pounds, you know. So I wish that I had had that uh, attitude when I was married. And it wasn't even just the attitude, it was just the consciousness and the skills. So I think that's another thing we haven't gotten into so much today, but could probably do other podcasts on, like, yeah, what are those skills that a man needs to demonstrate in order to uh, avoid any walkaway wife syndrome.
Well, that's something I talk about a lot in my program is like nobody taught us how to be a husband. It's like my dad taught me a lot of things, but he really didn't teach me about how being a husband, how to keep connection going, keep the sexual spark going, how to keep, her, keep things in the relationship, going well. And I believe it's a skill set that you can learn. But if we're not taught it, then what we do is we assume that it's like everything else. And most of us grew up in families where they were just there. I didn't have to worry about my mom and dad leaving. I didn't have to worry about my brothers leaving. I didn't have, and then we get into relationships kind of early on where we're in grade school and school, where it's like, oh, it's just the kid sitting next to me. We become friends, and then we're on the playground, and then we do. It's like the relationships are there, and they're kind of easy. They just happen sort of organically. And so we grow up thinking, well, oh, I'll get married and it'll just be like every other relationship I've ever had, which is I don't have to do a lot of work. I just kind of show up and be me. And then, I'm going to get the love and acceptance that I want because I've always been okay. And so I think it becomes a shock to the system of like, oh, there's a problem in my marriage. Like, oh, I actually have to do something in this relationship besides just sit on the couch. So I think it is a skill set that is not taught to young boys and men about, like, this is how you do relationship, and this is how you do relationship with women. So that's kind of
That's
my
the best point.
soapbox.
This is the best point ever.
Or it's the preventative. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the best point ever. Is imagine 500 years ago we started to teach in school how to do life, people, connection, communication, relationships, how to manage ourselves when we feel jealous, or when we feel angry, when we feel frustrated, when we feel resentful. Imagine 500 years ago we started to teach this in school. Imagine where we would be now, and and being able to not just be able to be taught this, but also it was modeled into us. So can you imagine that the most vital things about people, human skills, we just leave it to our monkey brain and nature to try to figure this out? It's ridiculous. You would never do that with anything else. You wouldn't do that with surgery. You wouldn't do that with flying, because we're constantly perfecting this. So schools really need to have this education system of where we can learn to develop how to have better connections, be a better human being. It's not only perfect, we're going to make mistakes. And maybe that's one of the lessons as well. There are going to be some points where there are going to be some shadow parts, dark parts of us. But imagine a world where we were taught this instead of having to go later on when the damage is done, then trying to fix and repair this.
Yeah. Consciousness in every aspect of life. That's become my philosophy. Your relationships, your conscious friendship, consciousness about your health, about your parenting, your finances.
Pay the bill, so don't live in the dark.
Make your bed.
Make your
All
bed.
right.
And make your bed. Yeah.
I made my bed today. Just want to let you know.
Good. That's one of the things you could always start with. Make your bed.
It's the little things.
All right, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you again for being a part of the Nice Guy Show. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe, as this helps us to reach out to more men who need support, or women. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you subscribe there as well. Give us a review. Go to niceguyshow.com to get on the mailing list. If you like this podcast, check out a recent one we did that was a focus on Chuck's Confident Husband Solution group program, because he's giving men this training to really prevent walkaway wife syndrome. And if your wife did walk away and you're getting a divorce, get in touch with me. Faisal, you can just get in touch with for a laugh.
Faisal, if you've gone through the whole process and you're looking to date again, we're a full service.
We're a full service
here.
from single, from being dateless,
how to get her, how to keep her, what to do when you lose her. Rinse, repeat.
There we go. The whole circle.
So you can connect with Faisal on his Instagram, connect with Chuck on his Instagram, his YouTube, and you can connect with me on Instagram or my YouTube. And go check us out at integrationnation.com. It's a men's community we're part of. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.